you. Good morning. Bonjour. As a follow-up from last week on Thursday, where we talked about paper 3 in French, today we are going to talk about paper 1 in French for the KCSE candidates this year. I have titled the talk, Comment passer l'examen KCSE avec réussite? How to sit the KCSE exam with success. My name is Mr. Peter Nzube, a teacher of French and the Deputy Principal of Moindimbingu. Thank you. We shall begin if you are ready. Now, I want us to begin by assuming that not everybody was on board the other time, and we want to have a brief overview of the exam so that we can know what percentage we are looking for in paper 1. We saw in paper 3 that we were looking for a total of 25%. I say 25% because at the end, if we forfeit the 25%, then it means we'll be working from a total of 75%. Now today we are looking at paper 1, and paper 1 has 3 parts. It has 3 parts. Usually it has comprehension orale, the one I'm highlighting with my cursor, which we also refer to as just a bit. Highlighter. So we have what I've just highlighted, comprehension orale, which are usually passages. And we shall be talking more about these passages in a short while. Now, these passages will give you a total of 15 points, which is actually 15%. Now, the comprehension passages are followed by dictation. Dictation, which is usually part 2 of this exam, will give you 5 points, which in essence is 5%. Then we have the part 3, which is not much about listening, but this is writing. We call it rédaction, which has 25 points. Rédaction, 25 points. Now, the 25 points are arrived at from composition 1 and composition 2. Usually there are 2 compositions. You choose from 1A and B, and the composition you write will be rated or will be marked out of 10 points, which means 10%. Then composition 2, you choose composition 2A or B. You make a choice, you write only one out of the 2, and then that will give you 15 points, which then will mean 15%. So if you look keenly, you realize that we have dictée 5, comprehension orale 15, that makes 20, plus the 25 from the rédaction or compositions, that will give you 45%. So this paper has more weight than paper 3 in terms of the percentage you will be getting. Now, that means after we talk of paper 1 today, then what shall be remaining is paper 2 alone, which will give you a total of 30%. So allow me to proceed to the details of this paper. I just want to erase the areas I've highlighted before we should proceed to a detailed approach to our paper 1. Now, looking at the image posted on your screen, we have a radio. This radio is meant to make you understand that the better part of this exam is from listening, and you listen to a cassette playing on a radio. It is possible around this time we are going to listen to a CD from a radio. That is why we refer to this exam as listening. Most people will ask you, are you doing your listening exam today? Why? Because the better part of this exam, other than the compositions, is meant to be listened from a radio. So we have listening, comprehension, dictation, and composition. The three parts, we want to look at the three parts of the exam. The exam is coded as 501/1. So we want to look at les trois parties de l'épreuve. 501/1. Épreuve in French means exam. So the first one is the first part, compréhension orale, listening comprehension. Second part, dictation. Then we have part 3, rédaction, compositions. There is a key attention that is called upon you. Now look here, you're given 5 minutes. You know, when the exam is given, usually the examiners will write on the board to say the duration of the exam, to say when we're beginning the exam and when you're going to end the exam. For the French exam, there is 5 minutes that NEC gives free. It is not part of the exam. Now, what are you supposed to be doing with the 5 minutes that the examiner will not put as part of the duration for the exam? You're supposed to be looking at the instructions. You're supposed to be going through the exam paper to check whether this time they are brought tables, they are brought gaps, they are brought what is the nature of the questions? What is the nature of the questions that the NEC has brought around this time? So the 5 minutes are meant to allow you to go through the paper in a more general way. You also need to know, are the compositions being brought to? And what is the nature of the composition? It gives you an overview. So allow me to proceed now, since we have seen the 3 broad parts of this exam. We go to part 1 of this exam, and that is listening comprehension. Listening comprehension. Allow me to make some correction here. The listening comprehension is actually out of 15, not 5, 15. Why do we have some young girl listening to something? Now, listening comprehension is actually from the cassette directly. And that's why we have the girl listening. If you look keenly, she has even closed her eyes. Are we going to have earphones during the exam? No. But this is how keen one needs to be able to follow what is going on through the cassette. Now, usually the exam begins with a passage. Thank you. We had taken a short pause. Wish to continue. We're still on listening comprehension. Listening comprehension, we've said from the photo, we can see how keen the young girl is. That's how keen you need to be able to follow and be able to respond to questions from the listening comprehension. Now, I just mentioned that the exam begins with a passage or with a part that requires you to listen just to acclimatize yourself, to familiarize yourself with how the examiners are going to speak. So there is the first part that is not meant for testing. You need not panic. It is in French. It is only meant for you to be able to acclimatize your ears, familiarize yourself with the way they'll be talking, for the examiner to adjust the volume of the radio cassette or the radio or the player, the CD player. So that part is meant for that. Now, putting that aside, then we need to ask ourselves, so how many passages are we likely to have in this exam? If you look at the historical background of this exam, you realize we have an average of 5 passages. Hein? On a environ 5 passages à écouter. 5 passages, usually. At one time, they went to 6, but they are usually 5. Now, let's pay attention to the following. Faisons attention au domaine suivant. What is the nature of the question? The questions to be answered. We have vide à remplir, vide à remplir. There is an accent missing at à remplir, accent grave. So we have gaps to be or blanks to be filled in. Then we have les fiches à compléter. Les fiches à compléter. We have the forms to be completed or to be filled. Then we have les tableurs à remplir. Les tableurs à remplir. That is tables to be filled. Tables to be filled. Then we have question ouverte. Question ouverte. That is open question, what we may call open-ended questions. Then we have question à réponse limitée, where you are limited in terms of thinking. It is restricted, the answers are restricted. Then we have finalement les chiffres à fournir, les chiffres à fournir, where you are required to provide numbers, just numbers, like when you are giving telephone numbers, you don't need to spell that. So if you are good at that point and you have looked at the overall nature of the exam, then we can go to specifics. So we want to look at what I am referring to as genre de passage. Now, if you look at the word passage, that looks transparent, passages. Then genre, that looks like genres. So we're just looking at the nature of the passages. What are the passages that have been tested, that are being tested? The passages will come in the nature of dialogue, dialogues. Hein? As I said, les textes ou bien les passages peuvent être, they can be the dialogue. Now remember, we are listening. The only thing we can see are questions and the marks are awarded, but we'll hear a dialogue. Now usually a dialogue is an exchange between two people, can be more, two people. So the question is, if I hear a dialogue being presented to me, are there particular types of questions that I will anticipate? most likely they will ask you, qui parle à qui? Who is talking to who? Où sont-ils? Where are they? De quoi parlent-ils? What are they talking about? So, listening to people as they talk, we are able to discern the type of questions to anticipate. Listening to their background, we are able to tell the environment in which the dialogue takes place. The passage can also be des bulletins, news item, news item. It can be la météo, weather. It can be les informations, news. It can be sportive. It can be about sports item. It can be anything that can be presented on a news item. If we hear bulletin, then we should be able to anticipate, even without seeing the questions, we should be able to anticipate the nature of questions. Then the passage can be des annonces. It can be an announcement. An announcement. So what is being announced? Who is doing the announcement? Qui annonce? Sur quoi est l'annonce? Then the text can be des conversations téléphoniques. Des conversations téléphoniques. Now, a dialogue is slightly different from a conversation via a telephone. Why? In a telephone, we have the nature or the layout. We have, for example, somebody calling, saying, allô, je m'appelle Peter, j'aimerais parler à Joséphine. See, now we have the person calling and we have the person being called. So most likely then, somebody will want to know, qui fait l'appel? Qui appelle? Who is calling? Qui est appelé? Who is being called? Sur quoi est cet appel téléphonique? What is it about? Il s'agit de quoi? Cet appel téléphonique. So it's slightly different, although it looks closely related to dialogue. Then we have les témoignages, witnessing, a witness. For example, if there is an accident, somebody may témoigner, may give their account of what they have witnessed. So again, the question will be based on the name of le témoin, the name of le témoin. I don't know whether you, témoin is written témoin, témoin like that, témoin. Like we talk of les témoins de Jéhovah, Jehovah Witness, and so forth and so on. Témoignage, now what they are giving their account on. Then it can be on publicité, an advert. Now, if it's a dialogue on an advert, then what questions would one anticipate? We are expecting, for example, it is a commodity or it's a product that is being advertised. C'est quoi ce produit? So here we are looking up le produit. What is this product? Le produit. We are expecting maybe les abordages. What, ou bien le prix. We can talk about the price, le prix. We can talk about, at the same time, its advantages, its disadvantages. We can talk about if it is available, disponibility. Disponibility. Where is it? Where can we find it? Is it available? This product you're talking about. Sorry, my keyboard does not allow accents, so you shall bear with it. Maybe let me try to see whether I can put the accents for you. Yes, I think it is possible. Disponibility. Disponibility, we can have that answer there, disponibility. So then we asking, is the item you are advertising available? What is it? What is it used for? Its price, its availability. That is basically what we are looking at. So if we assist of that issue, then we can move to the next thing I want to talk about. I want to now look at the types of questions. Now we have looked at les genres des passages, the types of passages. We're also going to show the importance of planning to anticipate some types of questions from a particular genre of text. If it's a dialogue, we expect to be asked about who is talking to who. If it's a news item, if it's a, then it can just be a paragraph. I failed to mention that it can just be just in paragraph. It can be a paragraph. It doesn't need to be. It doesn't need to be all this. It can be just a passage that is read for you. Now we want to look at the types of questions. Type de question. What are the types of questions that have been tested, that are being tested? We are the first place, we have des tables à compléter. A table to be completed. You see, if it's a table, then it is limited because you cannot write paragraphs in a table. A table requires specific brief answers. If it is fiche à remplir, like when you are in joining your school, you had something to fill in. There was a form. That is fiche à remplir. That is a type of a fiche where you would say your name, your primary school, and blah, blah, blah. So remember, in that fiche, you couldn't give stories. You could only give specific. The place for name, give a name. Then we have des trous à remplir, gaps to be filled or blanks to be filled, and depends on the nature of the gaps. Most of them require only one answer, only one item as an answer. Then we have the question ouverte, open-ended questions, meaning you can frame your answer the way you think works for you. Of course, you base yourself on what you listen to, but then after you listen, in these questions, you formulate your answer. Then we have les questions à réponse limitée. I think we mentioned that. Where you're limited, you cannot frame it, you just give it the way you add it, just like is the case when it comes to les trous, les trous, les trous. So I want us to look at each case at a time. We look at the tableau, we want to look at a table, and then we say what time it was tested, although most of them were tested repeatedly. But we want to look, what is a table? We want to look, what is a fiche à remplir? We want to look at what is trou à remplir. We want to look at questions ouvertes and talk about them. We want to look at questions à réponse limitée and we talk about them. So we are going to each case within a short time. So the first one there is a question that was tested in 04. I chose to give this one as an example, although there are others that are recent, just to point to you that tables were tested before. It is not just a current issue. We have the table here, a question 8 of KCSE 501, year 2004. Tableau completed. Now, when you look at the table, it has 5 rows, and it has 4 columns. Now on the top there, we have action, we have fait par, we have affecté, we have lieu, so we have the action, we have who did the action, we have who was affected by the action, who was affected by the action, then we have the place, where it took place. The table can be of a different nature. It doesn't have to taste what we are looking at. Now, the table will provide you with hints. What do I mean with the hints? Now here you are given the action, tuer, killing, murder. Higher. Who did it? So in the passage, they will have talked about the killing. They will have said who did it. They will have said who was affected, who was killed. But then the examiner chooses to give you tuer as the action, and here chooses to tell you where it happened. Petit village, small village. So now they want you to say who did the killing and who was killed, or who was affected by this. So yours is to provide this. So you see, you'll be giving one word. Here it is, name of the person who did it. Whether it is one name or two names as given by the passage, you provide that. So most likely you're giving two names or one name. If you give one name, you're good to go. If you give two names, then that's good. Affected, who are these? Who are the people killed? Do they have specific names? You can name them there. Then we have, in the second place, they have chosen not to give you the action, but they are giving you who did it. Now it is leopard. And who was affected by the action done by leopard? Jeunes gens, young people. Now the examiner chooses to leave out so that you provide the action, leave out so that you can provide lieu. Then in the third case, we have détruire, destruction as the action. Who did the action? The examiner wants you to provide that. Who was affected by the action? The examiner wants you to provide that. But where is it? Where did it take place? Says pied de montagne, at the foot of mountains. So the place is given. Now in the fourth place, which is the last place, we have the action is not given. They want you to give the examiner wants you to give the action. The examiner wants you to give who did the action. The examiner wants, no, the examiner doesn't want, provides you now the hint, femme. So now you know this action affected women. So what was the action then? What was this action? Who did this action that affected women? Then where did it take place? The examiner provides there and says le long des fleuves, along the rivers. Le long des fleuves. So you realize if you listen carefully to that passage, then you'll be able to get the keywords and connect so that you can fill in the table is provided. Now, I failed to mention something, and I think I need to mention. When you're listening to these passages, you listen them with a bias. What do I mean with a bias? You listen to get the answers to your questions. Usually you are told, now listen to passage 1. Then you listen. Once they are through with saying it, they tell you, now look at question 1A to D, for example. They give you time to look at the questions. So when you are looking at the questions, you are looking for the possible answers. So when you are listening for the second time, you listen with a bias. You look for specific information. Don't worry about what the passage is about. Worry about the answers in the passage that allow you to get marks when you put them at the questions provided. Then we can proceed. We have now looked at tableau à compléter, table to be completed. I want us to go to fiche à remplir. And here I've chosen question 2 of KCSE 501, an exam that was had in the year 2006. They brought fiche. They brought a what do we call it? A form to be filled. Now look at this. They say, notez les détails de l'invité. Notez les détails de l'invité. They are saying, note down the details of the invited. So here you have somebody who has been invited, let's say for an interview, and they have been engaged, and they have said their names, they have said their age, they have said their pastime activities, they have said a number of things, including their contact. Now, the examiner wants you to provide these details. So it's like you're filling a form. We have no, the surname. The surname. Now, remember, surnames are written in capital letters in French. Capital completely. For example, if it were me, my dad is Peter. So now I would say Peter like that. Peter like that. Then what is my name? My baptismal name is Josephat. So then I'll write, attention. The other names don't have to be capital. So I'll say Josephat, like that, Josephat. Now, then there is age that is provided there. Now, age, usually you give in number, but you provide years in written. For example, if I am 20 years, then I will say 20 ans. 20 ans. So the years, you just simply write 20. You don't have to spell. Why not spell? Because as you struggle to spell, you may get the wrong spelling. Yet when you write 20, you overcome the challenge of spellings. But now the years, you have to write. Anniversaire. How do we give our birthday? When is our birthday? Usually it is a date and month. For example, I was born on 30th of December, so I'll go to le 30 décembre. Now, décembre in French doesn't begin with capital. It begins with a small letter, no, décembre. So I write like that. So now you realize you are filling in information that you listened to from the radio. It is not information that, let me put an accent on décembre. Décembre. Décembre has to have that less, décembre, like that. Now, then it comes down here. I've just mentioned you are filling information that you have had on the passage. You are not giving your personal details. No, I'm just giving these details as an example. I'm assuming I've had in the radio cassette, Peter, I've had Nzouve, I've had Josephat, I've had 20 ans, I've had le 30 décembre. Now, when you're giving your birthday, you don't give the year because you were born long time. You are celebrating your birthday in different years. Now, past temps, we are assuming that person talked about their past temps. What is it they had as pastime activity? Maybe it is, let's assume, regarder la télévision, right, that. Regarder la télévision, we can have jouer, football, then we can have chanter. What do they say were their leisure time activity or their pastime activity? So those ones we'll have to tabulate. Then we have a numéro de téléphone. Usually a numéro de téléphone is given, it is chiffré. You don't, you don't spell. You cannot spell a telephone number. It would be tedious and you're likely not to have enough space to do that. Or you are likely to commit spelling errors. So you simply give it. For example, 07, 27, you give them, usually are given in pairs. So if we are okay with the fiche à remplir, then we can proceed. Remember, you will have checked, you will have seen it is a form to be filled. So you will have fixed your mind that I'm listening to this passage, j'écoute ce passage to get information to fill in. Pour arriver à l'information ou les détails que je vais utiliser pour remplir ce fiche, or cette fiche. Then we can go to the other nature of questions. You can go to the other nature of questions. Remember, we are going case by case. Des trous à remplir. Des trous à remplir. Now we are looking at the blank spaces to be filled in. Now we need to be extremely careful here. Because if you are given a single gap, then it is very likely it will require only one answer, only one word for the answer. Just a minute. Okay. For example, I've picked an example of question 2 of KCSE 501/1, 2013. 2013 now is a bit recent. Now, question number 2 said, dans ce texte, on parle de la. Now you see, if you've been taking French, then you realize the moment you have de la, it's already suggested that what you're feeling inside here will be feminine. La. Feminine. It's very likely you are going to give a noun because it is only nouns that take definite articles, les articles définis. So we need to be careful now. So the answer will be provided, there's no problem. Then it continues and says, so I want to correct this, just a minute. Should be small d, because we are in progress. Dans ce texte, on parle de la tirée, dash, d'une tirée. Again here, the moment you say une, this article indéfini, it means here we are also going to use a noun, but the noun is feminine. So as I listen to the passage, then I'm looking for these nouns. Well, la bonne réponse that time, the correct answer was la pollution. Donc, and there it was rivière. So it was, dans ce texte, on parle de la pollution d'une rivière. D'une rivière. So these are the answers. So each was half a mark. So you would eventually end up getting 1 mark. Then another example is question 3 of the same exam. Question 3. On trouve le produit où, we find this product où. So most likely here, it's only one answer. And you see où usually comes before a place in plurial. So this one already suggests here you are going to have a noun naming a place or places ending with S. Then et où, again the same case. La bonne réponse that time for this gap was magasin. It is here. Magasin. Let me highlight the answers. Maybe somebody hasn't seen them, and it's important we see responses. These are answers. These are answers. If we have not been able to see them. So here we are saying, on trouve le produit ou magasin ou supermarché. This one, magasin. This one, supermarché. So that's how it will be. So you see, gaps here, a gap will require one answer. Thank you. Now we can then look at question ouverte, open question. Now the open question doesn't mean you will go and think about answers that are outside of what you heard. No, that is not the case. What it means is that you can frame the answer in your own way. You listen to the information, but you can use your own words to respond. You are not forced, like you are forced in les trous à remplir. Les trous à remplir, you had to give pollution. You couldn't say something different. You had to give rivière. You had to give magasin. You had to give supermarché. But now in these ones, you have the answer in a sentence of words of your own choice. Okay. So we have question 4C of KCSE 2011. And it said, que faisait Nathalie quand Mathilde a appelé? Que faisait Nathalie quand Mathilde a appelé? What was Nathalie doing when Mathilde called? Then here you will say something. Elle, what was she doing? Elle faisait des lignes. Par exemple, she was, let's see, she was washing clothes, for example. Attends. Elle, elle faisait des lignes. She was washing clothes. You say des lignes. You give that as your answer, and it will be okay. Let's try to reduce. Okay. Then we can say that is our answer, and we can highlight it. We can highlight it so that just a minute. We highlight it. Highlight it like that. Elle faisait des lignes. She was washing clothes. The question is already indicating faisait, meaning in the past. That is l'imparfait. So you need to frame the answer likewise. Then we have question 5B of 2012, KCSE 2012. Qu'est-ce que les deux amis voulaient acheter? Qu'est-ce que les deux amis voulaient acheter? What do they wish to buy? Let's assume the answer was, what did they want to do? Let's see. Let's assume the answer is they wanted to buy sweets. So you say, ils voulaient. Now remember here it is les deux amis. Ils voulaient. There's a mistake somewhere in the framing of the question, but not to worry, we shall correct it. Voulait, E-N-T, comme ça. Voulait acheter des bonbons. For example, let's assume that is what we had in the radio, bonbon. You wanted to buy sweets, bonbon. Voilà. Then we perhaps can highlight our answer so that it becomes easy for us to remember what to give as an answer. We are not saying you are light in an exam situation. We are only highlighting so that we know it is the answer we have provided ourselves. What did they want to buy? Then we are saying they wish to buy sweets. So basically, you realize we are formulating our own sentences based on what we have heard from the radio. You are allowed to frame it. That's why we are saying ouverte. Now, then we can go to a number of things that we need to pay attention to. We need to pay attention to the following words. Why do I choose to say we pay attention? They are mots-clés. They are keywords. Keywords, they allow you to know the anticipated answer. For example, if you hear selon, and selon, according to, selon l'écrivain, according to the writer. For example, if in the passage they're talking about a writer. So the answer is based on the opinion or point of view of the writer. If it is selon vous, now the examiner says selon vous, according to you. Now they are seeking your own opinion. They are seeking your own opinion. That will mean the same as d'après, according to, d'après le professeur. Is that okay? As regards the teacher. À partir de, as regards, à propos de, the same thing. When you hear the word qui, now then they are looking for a doer. It's a person. Qui parle? Who is speaking? Who is speaking? So here you're providing a name of a person or a name of a doer. Que, what? So this is not a person, this is action. Then we have quoi. De quoi parle-t-il? What are they talking about? Quoi. Then we have quand. Quand talks about time, when, quand. Hein? Quand s'est passé l'accident? When did the accident take place? Quand s'est passé l'accident? Then we have quel, and I think as of Form 2, we learned about this interrogative pronoun. This interrogative pronoun. Quel, which. We have quel masculin. We have quel féminin. But we also have quel pluriel. Thank you. There was a background noise, so we wanted to control it. So we have other quels we have not put here. We have quel pluriel, we have quel pluriel masculin, féminin. Those interrogative pronouns. Then we have comment, how. Then we have combien, how many. We have où, where. We have justifier, when you want to justify, when you want to give support to your stand. You are saying we, but why did you say we? Then you give justification, justification. So these are important words. That's why we are calling them expression ou mots-clés, key words, key expressions. They will tell you even when you don't understand the rest of the phrasing of the sentence of the question, they will make you know, here it's about numbers, combien. Here it's about how, comment. Here it's about where, who. Here it's about a person talking, qui, or a person doing. I've given an NB there because we've realized that majority of the students are good. Contrary to the imagination, most of the candidates are good in listening. In fact, they are better in listening than in the grammar. But they leave blank spaces. So I would like to mention at this point that this is exam in quotes for the struggling student. Why do I say the struggling student? Because they keep writing, they give answers. The bright student chooses that they don't know the answer and they will not try. A blank space will give you a 0. A space that has been filled with information is likely to get a tick. That's why I've written there NB, a note, not this one. Même les sons peuvent gagner des points. Même les sons peuvent gagner des points. That even sounds may get points. You may write a word imagining you haven't spelled it well. You find you spelled it well and you get a tick. You may write an answer thinking it was wrong. Kumbe, it was right, you get it right. You may give an answer that you have even misspelled or you have not done agreement. Then we valorize. We say the Kenyan student had this and we give mark. It has happened before, it can happen again. So let us look at those things. We are coming to the end of the listening passages, the listening comprehension, and I want us to relook at what we have just said before we proceed to now dictate. Now look here. This is what we have said. You said the exam has 3 parts: comprehension orale, dictée, rédaction. And we have said for the 5 minutes that are not accounted for, given before the exam begins, kindly look at the nature of the questions, nature of compositions. We have said that the types of questions can be tables to be filled in, des tableaux à compléter, des fiches à remplir, formula forms to be filled, des trous à remplir, gaps to be filled, questions ouvertes, open questions, questions à réponse limitée. And then we have gone to examples for each case. I want us to proceed Then we can, if we have questions, we can ask them maybe after we are through with the dictate. Now, I want us to go now to dictation. Now, dictation here gives you 5%. 5% is not a negligible mark. It is 5%. You require it. Now, if you look keenly at the image there, it shows you of people writing, shows you of somebody reading. That is the nature of dictation. Somebody is reading a passage and they are recorded on the CD or the cassette, and you are writing what you can hear. So it just looks like what the boys and the girls in this image are doing. What happens? How many readings do we have? Have they changed? No. From time immemorial, currently happening, and this is what will also happen in the forthcoming exam, we have 3 readings. We have première lecture, vitesse normale, vitesse normale, vitesse normale. Why do they do it at the normal speed? They just want you to get an overview, a general sense of what the passage is about. Then we have the second reading, deuxième lecture, and this is lente. How did I say vite? Let me remove vite. It is not vite, it is lente. This one is lente. It is so slow that for the good student, you almost get bored. It is lente et avec des points de ponctuation. They even give punctuation points. So we need to take care here so that we do not end up now even writing, spelling out the punctuation marks. Now, punctuation marks are supposed to be symbols. We shall be looking at how they look like, so that whoever doesn't know how they look like is able to see. So the second reading is read at a very slow pace. I shall attempt to do it because you have an example here. Then we say how we are supposed to go about that. Then after the second reading, we go to the third reading, troisième lecture, and this one is vitesse normale. It is read at normal speed. Why at normal speed? You already have the reading in second reading, slowly in chunks, with punctuations articulated, you have written. Now they go to the third reading so that you can now relook at what you wrote. Relook at what you have written. But remember, the punctuation marks can't change at this level because you cannot just put them there unless they are said. You write what you hear said. You don't write what you imagine is said. Now, I have chosen to bring la ponctuation here, les points de ponctuation. Why? You need to know how to write them. You don't spell them. You just write them the way they are here. Like premièrement here we have, I want to put my cursor there. Here we have le point d'interrogation. Le point d'interrogation. You simply write it the way it is here. Don't struggle with how it is pronounced. Point. That's a full stop. Virgule. Point de suspension. Point d'exclamation. Les guillemets. Although they can bring les guillemets, the others that have sharp ends, les guillemets. Point virgule. 2 points. Tiré. So when you hear the examiner saying that, you simply put the symbols. Don't spell out. If you spell out, that will be a mistake. That will be a mistake. Okay. Now, this dictation, how is it marked even before we go to it? Let me show you where it is marked. You are allowed to make mistakes. Maybe I should begin by asking, so how many mistakes do you want to do in your final exam? If I were the one, I would say, I don't want to make any mistakes. Je ne veux pas commettre des erreurs. Je ne peux pas commettre des erreurs. Why? Because this is an exam and we should get everything out of everything. Now, this is the grille d'évaluation. This is what most students have never seen. This is what we use to mark your dictation. This is what we use to mark your dictation. A marking scheme in French is called grille d'évaluation. Grille d'évaluation, marking scheme. Now, this time, sorry about that, this time, the whole of dictation had 86 items. 86 items, what does it mean? A comma is an item, a word is an item. So it had 86 items. And this is how they chose to mark. Here we have the marks from 0 to 5. Now here we have the number of mistakes people are getting. So if you decide to make up to 4 mistakes, you still get your 5%. You get the full mark. You get the full mark. If you choose to have, you commit 5 to 12 mistakes, all those mistakes, you will still be given 4.5 out of 5. So this is the cheapest exam ever, because how do you go beyond 12 mistakes? Like, seriously? So commit if you want, if you wish, 5 to 12 mistakes, and you get your 4.5 out of 5. Or better still, commit 1 mistake, 2 mistakes, 3 mistakes, 4 mistakes, and you get your 5 out of 5. What are the mistakes you are likely to commit? If a word is spelled with an accent somewhere, like accent tiré, no, it's not accent tiré, accent aigu, accent grave, accent circonflexe. If you don't put it there, then the whole word is misspelled. We all know at the beginning of a sentence, we begin with majuscule, capital letters. If you choose to begin a sentence with a small letter, then that word is as good as misspelled. So you lose. If you choose to break a word into 2, for example, with the word bonjour, you write bon, then you write jour. You have already formed 2 words, bon and jour, yet it was supposed to be bonjour. Then bon is a mistake, you have misspelled. Jour is an additional word, second mistake. So you see, if you create words that do not exist, those are mistakes already. If you choose not to write, you omit. That's another mistake. You don't leave out words. So you need to write the words that are said. You need to write them singly if it's only one, and that's about it. So I think I've made myself clear on that. Then you need to write in a legible handwriting. Lisible, soit lisible. Why? If I can't read what you have written, it's likely to be a mistake. It's likely to be a mistake. So let us check on that. Let us look at articles and so forth and so on. I want us to proceed. I want to give an example of dictation that was done so that we can talk about it here. There we go. Exemple de dictée. Exemple. That's how we write example in French. Exemple. Almost like English, only that after X, you can see it is E, not A. Now, this is a passage. This is a short paragraph that was brought for students to write as their dictation. I want to read it at normal speed. What we mean by normal speed. J'ai lu ton annonce et je suis très intéressé. Je m'appelle Paul, j'ai 18 ans et je suis français. J'habite à Paris depuis quelques années, mais je déteste cette ville. J'ai déjà visité ton pays et j'aimerais y revenir en vacances. Et pourquoi pas y travailler? Est-ce que je pourrais venir le mois de juin pour 2 mois? Nous pourrons voyager ensemble à la côte si tu veux. Merci. J'attends ta réponse. Paul. Normal speed. That is the normal speed. That's how it will be read, at normal speed. Now, at that point, we need not do anything other than just listen and get the overall sense of this dialogue. But now when they go to the second one, it will be read so slowly and repetitively. Par exemple, j'ai lu ton annonce. J'ai lu ton annonce. Et je suis très intéressé. Point. Et je suis très intéressé. Point. That's how they'll be reading. So unless you're extremely slow, unless you have panicked, unless vous êtes bloqué, it's very possible you are going to write everything because it will be said at a speed that you can easily follow. Now let's look at a number of things that I talked about. I want to highlight them. Now, it is at the beginning of the dictée, so that one will be capital. Je will be capital. Point is a punctuation mark, so it will not be spelled out. It will just be as simple. You have begun another sentence after full stops and after question marks and after exclamation marks, a new sentence begins. So je will be capital. Where you hear les chiffres, you don't need to struggle to spell them. However, whether you spell them or you put them as numbers, you still get the same mark. 18. This person can write 18 like that. They will get the same as those who go ahead and spell them like that. So, better still, I will choose not to spell like that. I will choose to write 18. I will get the same mark. So that's about it. That's about it. Sometimes you listen and you are like, that sentence is too long. I think there should be a comma or full stop. No, who said that? You are a copy typist, so you simply copy what you are given to write. You don't change a thing. Now, if we assist of that, then we can move. We can move from dictée. Remember, so far we have talked about passages, comprehension orale. Now we have talked about la dictée or dictation. Now I want us to go to the last part of this exam, and that is rédaction. The image there says now we are beginning to write. You see, what was running on the cassette or on the radio is over. There is no more listening. Rédaction are already written on the question paper and they are not recorded. That radio is about to be switched off or it has already been switched off. Now, how many compositions do we have? Nous avons deux rédactions. Deux rédactions. We have composition 1 and we have composition 2. Rédaction ou composition 1, rédaction ou composition 2. Now, in number 1, we have A or B. You make a choice. A or B. You make a choice. In number 2, we have A or B. You make a choice. That's why I've indicated here. A stroke B. You can't do both. You choose one. We have 2A or B. You choose one. You can't do the two. It will be a waste of time because you still will get a mark for one of the two. Now, usually composition number 1 expects you to have 120 to 150 words. Is it wrong to write more? No. Composition 2 expects you to write between 150 to 180 words. Is it wrong to write more? No. Composition 1 will give you 10 marks or 10% because he said everything is in percentage in French. Composition 2 will give you 15%. So again, they are important. These are things you can do now and have your teacher mark and guide you, because compositions will simply come from what you know, what you have gone through, if you have gone through the syllabus with your teacher from Form 1 to Form 4. Now let us go to specific details for each of the compositions so that we know how, we know what does the examiner at the marking center look for. Rédaction A or B. So the first thing you do is to identify the composition you're writing. For example, I have chosen, I'll write composition number 1A. I will do this. This is what I will do. I will use my pen and I will either take composition 1A or I'll put a mark around it like that. I'm doing that one. I'll go to composition 2 and choose again from the question paper, just like that. Then when I'm writing the composition, I will again go ahead and write 1A. Then I write my composition. That seems like idle work, but it costs one about 2 months. If you have not marked anywhere what composition you're writing, we as the examiners know which one you are writing, but we don't care. We wanted to be told. So once we mark, say for example, you get 9 out of 10, minus 2. So you see, you lose 2 marks for not identifying the question you are answering. So let's do that. Now, then you see a student may even be weak, but they write. Let's say, for example, a student is weak, circles the question they are going to do, and they end up getting, for example, 7. They will get their 7, home and dry, they are okay. A bright student gets 9. But we have to check, we have to remove 2 marks. So you end up getting 7. Who is brighter than the other? You are equal. One is not very good, but is careful with the instructions. The other one is good, but careless with the instruction. They end up getting 7 out of 10. Now, composition 1 is actually functional writing. I'm saying functional writing because I know we are also taking English, and in paper 1, we have the writing that we call functional writing. Functional writing is formulaic. It deals with the layout. It is layout. It is format specific. You get lots of marks for knowing how to present it, as opposed to how to even write it. So in functional writing, you'll be expected to write on the following domains. That's why I've said les domaines suivantes. Sur les domaines suivantes. Lettre amicale, friendly letter. They have always been coming. They might come again. Lettre officielle, official letter. Lettre amicale, do you know where to place the single address? Do you know where to place the date? Do you know it has to have a body? Do you know it has to have a conclusion? Lettre officielle, 2 addresses, and so forth and so on. Do we know the tone? Then we have recette, recipe. Do you know how to write a recipe? Title, number of people for which the recette is meant, durée de préparation, les ingrédients, réalisation, servir. Do we know that? We have programme, the structure of the program, l'heure, l'activité, l'exécuteur. We have itinéraire. For example, if the president was to visit Machakos, how is this journey planned? Dialogue, planned how? You'll arrive at Mulolongo at 10, then proceed to arrive at 10:30, then proceed to Chumvi at this time. That is what we call itinéraire. It is different from program. Program is the running of an activity or function. Then a dialogue, you can be asked to write a dialogue. Last year, but one they wrote a dialogue. Curriculum vitae, as it was in 2021. not 2021, sorry, 2011. Then we have email. Now, email has not been tested for quite some time, and let's be careful on this. They can spring surprises. Now, for composition 1, you realize it is not a story, it's more of something you're doing as of now. So that's why I've said noter, on utilise plutôt le présent. It's more likely we use the present tense. The present tense. Although if you're writing a letter, you can tell your cousin or whoever you're writing to about what happened at home sometime in the past. But basically, the tense for the functional writing is present. It's present. Will we count how many words you have used? Will we count how many words you have used? It's unlikely. It's unlikely, provided you have written about the item convincingly. If it's a letter, we feel you have written a letter and it is okay, it has communicated, then peu importe les mots utilisés, le nombre de mots. But you see, if you write a letter and you write a quarter a page, like seriously? That already suggests you are lacking vocabulary. That already tells the person marking your paper, it's very likely the letter is not fully done. So you see, it's important for you to remember that, because if you don't, then you may be attracting the examiner to look keenly at your work and maybe end up discovering what you have not done right. If you allow, then we can proceed. I want to show you how the expectations, generally the expectation. I want to share a bit an overview of the marking scheme, how it looks like. It might not be the one to be used, but this is how it will look like. Grille d'évaluation, the marking scheme for functional writing. You see, it is so structured. The people imagine, it is difficult, they'll look at my French. No, your French has its own space. There is another space, so almost everybody gets about 5. For you to get below 3, you will have struggled to get below 3. Now look here, we have the aspect that is being evaluated or being tested, aspect à évaluer. Then we have indicateur. What does the student need to have done to prove their point? Then what mark will they get? And you see there is 0, there is half, there is 1, there is 1.5. So for you to get 0, like seriously, it will to be another struggle. You are likely to get a half and above. Then again, you realize it's structured in a way that we have part 1, part 2, part 3, which has 2 parts, and part 3. So it is not very strict. People imagine it is strict. No, it isn't. It's not so strict. You're going to pass. First part is, have you respected the instructions? Respect the consigne. Attends. Is something here? We can leave it because it will not get ahead. De la consigne. Respect de la consigne. The examiner says, write a letter. Have you written a letter? Sawa. If you have written a letter, sawa, we give you your mark here. We give you 1.5. I give you 1.5. And you see, at this point, you need to ask yourself, what have you written? Have you written a friendly letter? What is the tone of a friendly letter? Have you written an official letter? Do you know the tone of an official letter? So it has to be not just by address, but also by the way it sounds. But most likely, if you have written a letter, they wanted a letter, you already have 1.5 for this part. Then we have what we call competence textuelle, textual competence. Have you used the required forms of verbs? Have you concluded the text as required? That's all. That's all. If you have used politesse is required, good. That's all. You get your 2.5. Then we have the other part. We have competence communicative. Are you able to communicate? Are you communicating? Have you said what was supposed to be said in the letter so that whoever is reading your letter gets it? So then we ask possède un vocabulaire suffisant. Now here if you are writing a recipe, we need 5 verbs in the domain of recipe. For example, ajouter, mélanger, faire bouillir, fédérer, servir. You use 5 verbs in the right tense, the right spelling, then we say you have the right number of, the right vocabulary. Vocabulary. Then, have you written a composition that is convincingly long enough to say it's a good letter? Long enough to say it's a recipe? We give you a mark. Have you given the details given with the relative ease? Essence relative. We give you a mark. So you'll be given your 4 points. It's very easy. You'll be given just freely like that. It's not debatable. Then finally, we have competence linguistique. What is your linguistic competence? Do you have good control? Fais preuve d'un bon contrôle de l'orthographe. Do you have good control, grip on spellings? Of course, as a high school student, you are not a university student, neither are you a teacher. So to your level, we give you 2. So this is an area where people score lots of marks, provided they can remember how to write that item. If it's a recipe, you write a recipe, you are likely to get not anything less than 7. If you allow me, then we can go to composition 2. So the question is, have you planned to wait for the exam, or are you waiting to see what will be brought? Have you written letters that have been marked by your teacher? Have you corrected them? Have you written receipts? Have you written dialogue? Have you written email? If you have written and the teacher has corrected, then the exam is as good as done. Composition 2. I want us to look at composition 2. Then once we look at composition 2, then we can look at a number of other things. Then you can ask me questions, because I like it when people ask me questions so that I can know whether I'm communicating or whether I need to improve on what I've said. Now, composition number 2 is what you call creative composition. Rédaction imaginaire, composition imaginaire. It's more of you imagine and you create. Now you choose A or B. Choose A or B. It is very important. Just a minute. So you choose either A or B. If I have decided to write composition 2B, then I can come, then I simply put a mark there like that. Now, if I forget everything, the examiner knows I'm writing composition 2B. Now, in creative writing, you anticipate that you are writing in the past. Usually, the composition are based on the past. The past. We'll be looking at examples here. It is the moment you are supposed now to express your vocabulary. It has a lot of space as opposed to functional writing. This is where you prove your linguistic ability, your creative ability. The compositions, the examiner may tell you to write a composition beginning as follows. Il était une fois. Attention, there's a mistake here. So we need to correct the mistake before we proceed, so that we don't have that as recorded as what should be. Fois with S. Il était une fois, once upon a time. So automatically now you know, if we are talking of once upon a time, it's not today, it's in the past. Ce soir-là, il faisait nuit et that night, it was dark and that night, ce soir-là, so it's already dans le passé. Then it can also be about proverbs, les proverbes semblent. Simple proverbs. Remember last year, but one, there were proverbs and people were crying everywhere. It's part of our syllabus. For example, c'est en vengeant qu'on devient vengeron. It is by doing that we become experts. They say it's by smithing that we become blacksmith, the French say. What is required of you if you're given a proverb like this is simply to write a composition that says, No, that doesn't say. Write a composition that proves the proverb. So unlike in Kiswahili, we don't give definitions. We will not define the proverb, we will not define it. Hatutapeana maana ya juu na maana ya ndani. So that is why it is important for us to know at this moment, we are simply writing a composition to conform to the proverb. We may at some point throw it inside there, we may bring it at the end, or we may bring it at the beginning, just to show we are writing about it, but we are not defining anything. So now, a number of things need to be taken into consideration. This time, you have to raise the number of words. 150 words is the least you can write. And why am I saying this? Because when we are marking, we divide the composition into two parts, part A and part B. And we mark each part independently out of 10. So your composition will be marked part 1 and part 2. First part, 75 words. Second part, 75 words. But if you have written 200 words, first part will be 200, second part will be, no, sorry, if you have used 200, first part will be 100, and then the second part, 100 again. So if you will not have reached 150 words, your guess is as good as mine. You'll be undermarked because there is a part of your composition that will be less in words. And the marking scheme tells us how to mark that part. Let's say, for example, you have written 75 words. So I will mark part 1 will be out of 10, part 2 will be out of 0 because you didn't write anything. Then I join the 2 and I divide and I look at my conversion table. What do I mean by conversion table? If part 1 is 10, part 2 is 10, that already brings us to 20. That means there's a table somewhere that tells me if a student gets 20 out of 20, this is what they get out of 15. I hope I've made myself clear. I want to go to the second thing you need to pay attention to is la conjugaison des verbes employés. Verbs must be well conjugated. Au temps du passé. The time is in the past, or you will use tenses in the past. What tenses are you comfortable with? You want to use subjunctive? If you're okay with it, fine. But I usually say it's important you limit yourself to what you can use with ease. Like passé composé, we learned it in Form 2. We have gone through it, so we are able to use with ease. L'imparfait, we did it in Form 3. We have had time to. Plus que parfait, you can sparingly use it. And I think that will be enough. You can write a good composition using those three tenses, sorry. Then the other thing you need to pay attention is niveau de vocabulaire. Here you are testing your level of vocabulary. So good connectors are important. Bonne expression, good expressions, they are important because it is your language level that determines the mark you get. Then we have, you take in interest, you pay your attention to la bonne structure des phrases. There is a structure, there is the way the French sentences are structured, unlike in the other languages. So I look for the good structure, look it. L'écriture lisible. Let your handwriting be legible. Let it be easy to read through. Then we have la ponctuation. Punctuate your composition very well. Begin with capital letters. Where question marks can be used, use them. Exclamation marks and so forth and so on. Then finally, pay attention to l'accord en genre et nombre. We know in French, we have to have subject, verb, agreement in number, in gender. It is very important for the French people. So let us pay attention to that. Now, I want us to look at some expressions that can be of use to us. Of course, I know you're prepared with yours. Now, I want us to look at some here, just as an example. You are writing your comprehension and you want to give a spark. Spark will take you to the heights of good marks. So you use expressions after using very good grammatical sentences. Now, the French will talk of donner sa langue au chien. Donner sa langue au chien. Huh? If you translate it literally, then it simply giving your tongue to the dog. I doubt whether that happens. So it simply means to give up in French. You give up or give in. Verser des larmes de joie. Huh? Larmes in French is tears. So you're shedding tears. Verser des larmes de joie. Of happiness or colère. So shedding tears of joy or pain. Then we have verser toutes les larmes de son cœur. Have you ever cried until you felt like you have drained? Then we say, that is, verser toutes larmes de son corps. Then when you want to say I'm in tears, you say en larmes. Then we have fondre comme neige au soleil. Fondre comme neige au soleil. Melt away or vanish like snow. A good example, j'ai fondu comme neige au soleil quand j'ai vu le directeur. Let me even write it here. Comme neige au soleil, quand j'ai vu le directeur ou le principal. Le principal. Principal is more transparent, looks like the one in English. So you see, j'ai fondu comme neige au soleil quand j'ai vu le principal. Attends, we can make him masculine. Now, let me highlight it. Highlight so that we are able to follow. C'est où? C'est par là. Attention. Now let me erase. So that we can highlight it in a good way. Where are we? We want to highlight what we have written as our answer. Keenly. Bingo. Allez, j'ai fondu comme neige au soleil quand j'ai vu le principal. I vanished like snow when I saw the principal. Doesn't mean we should do that, just an example. Then we have tout était en silence comme dans un tombeau. You want to talk about a moment where there was so much silence and really scared you. Tout était en silence comme dans un tombeau. Everything was silent as if you were in a kaburi, in a tomb. Then we have petit à petit, j'ai constaté que little by little, I realized that. So those are good expressions you can use to give spark to your composition. The other way is to hype your vocabulary, your niveau de vocabulaire or your niveau de langue. You can include some complex sentences. What do you mean by complex sentences? Some simple sentences that have been joined using puisque using other connectors. Now, even when we are talking about this, the rédaction, we must say this because it is important. La rédaction doit avoir. This composition must have the following. It must have une bonne introduction. You will not give the title introduction, no. But you will have to begin your composition in a way that one feels that paragraph 1 is l'introduction. You have to have your body after that, what we are calling encore avec des idées bien élaboré. Now, after the introduction, you have, for example, about 3 or 4 paragraphs where now you are doing your story. You are doing your imaginative composition. They are your ideas. Each paragraph carries an idea, and the idea has to be supported by other sub-ideas in a manner that flows logically. On doit avoir l'autre logique. Your composition has to flow. Then finally, you're supposed to have une conclusion. Conclude in a way that the examiner feels now you have ended your composition in a powerful way. So I want to take you back slightly to composition 2, or composition in general, before we conclude, because we are coming to the end of our talk, both in compositions and also in paper 2 in general. So basically, we have said the redaction, which is part 3, the last part of paper 1, has 2 compositions. It has composition 1A and B. You choose one. You are supposed to write between 120 words and 150 words. Here we will not count, but it is important for you to have a composition that looks long enough to convince. Then you get your 10 marks. And remember, I say composition 1 is format based. So remember the format or the many functional writings you have done with Mwalimu, do them, correct them, and wait with them. They will be of use to you. Then rédaction 2 is creative composition. It is imaginative composition. You choose A or B, you write one. You should have at least 150 words. This is a must because we as examiners will count how many words you've used. If they are below 150, you'll be undermarked because they count a lot. Then, what else have we said? We have given examples of the types of functional writing that may be tested: lettre amicale, recette, programme, itinéraire, dialogue, carigramme, vitae, email, and so forth and so on. Then we have gone ahead to say how easy it is to excel in this composition, because the marking is structured in a way that you should not be biased. It will take care of the weaker student, the average, and the strong one. Then we have composition 2. We've already talked about that. And we have given some examples of composition that may be tested here. Then we have gone to expressions, given examples of expressions. And we say these are just examples. As a candidate, you should be prepared with others and with your compositions ready, marked, revised, so that what you'll be writing will not be strange. It's something you have practiced. Then finally, we have said this composition has to have 3 parts, and I think that has been quite clear. So if we are okay with that, then I need to mention this, that it is possible we have printed books by Kenyans, or that are in use in Kenya, with emails, with creative compositions, with functional writing. If as a candidate I choose to have lived that word for word, present it in an exam, do I expect to get everything? If you want to do that, then make sure you do that from a book that is not in Kenya. Lifting a written composition the way it is and presenting it for marking for KCSE is highly penalized, because there is 0 involvement, there is 0 input by the student. The creativity thereof is not yours, so you don't deserve the marks. So let's just write good composition, allow our teachers to mark them, then we can use those ones we can lift because they belong to us. So if that is okay, and unless there are questions that are anticipated, then I wish to thank you for having been patient to be with me from the beginning of my talk about paper 501/1, which is the listening paper. They call it listening, although we have seen it as both the listening and compositions. Let me believe that what we said will be of use to the candidates, not only for this year, but the years to come. Merci pour votre attention et patience.